Hello, welcome to the live stream on the circular economy from the Network for Business Sustainability. My name is Tima Bansal. I'm the Executive Director of the Network for Business Sustainability. I am also a professor at the Ivey Business School. I will be your host today. I would like to start by acknowledging the land on which I live and work in London, Ontario. These are the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Attawandaron peoples. For generations, they have cared for their community, the land and waters, and continue to do so. I wish to pay my respect to their elders, acknowledge their status as the First Nations of Turtle Island. The Network for Business Sustainability aims to bridge management research with management practice. Researchers are particularly good at thinking, managers are really good at acting. We at NBS believe that we need both researchers and managers to collaborate in order to create long-term prosperity for all. Over the next year, NBS will engage in a number of these live stream events that will pull together the communities of research and practice to tackle important topics in business sustainability. We welcome your feedback, so please do look for the link in the comments for feedback. Let's move on to the topic. One of the greatest immediate challenges in sustainable development is that the economy is based on businesses that profit from extracting natural resources and generating waste. The circular economy asks of us to keep material resources in use for longer. It also asks us to remove the concept of waste so that all material stuff has value, from the plastics that are produced to the carbon in the atmosphere to the food that we grow. Less than 9% of material products are cycled back into the economy. That means that 91% of economic value is lost and waste is created. That's incredible. Today, I'm so excited to have Barb Swartzentruber and Jury Gualandris joining us. Barb is the Executive Director of the Smart Cities Office at the City of Guelph, which is in southwestern Ontario. She's leading a very ambitious initiative involving hundreds of local organizations for a circular food economy. Jury is an assistant professor at the Ivey Business School who is working with Barb on her initiative, but also a leading scholar in the circular economy. I'm so excited to have him here. So I thought I'd start off with a personal note and ask Barb first why she went to ask her about herself and why she entered the circular economy area. Barb. And you get to unmute too.
Always important to unmute. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's a really great opportunity. I've spent most of my career working in various levels of government on strategy, policy, innovation, and community development. And I started my career in the social services sector and working on social policy, but more recently I worked in IT and worked on the Ontario government's provincial open government strategy and open data. When I came to the city of Guelph about 8 years ago, I got the opportunity to bring all of those pieces together and to work in a mid-sized city where you actually can bring strategy, innovation, and connect them directly with creating change in the community. And you get to work on real world problems and opportunities, and you can't really think and act in silos at the city level. So the circular economy really provided a framework for the change that I think many of the leaders in our community were looking for, and being able to act both locally and globally at the same time and have an impact on some of the big issues that we're facing.
Fantastic, Barb. Thank you. Jury, tell us about yourself and why you went into the circular economy research area.
Thank you, Tima. So my work as a scholar in the last 10 years, I've always been focused on sustainable supply chains, broadly defined as a network of organizations that try to or strive to capably function within the thresholds of natural systems and society. And when I came to Canada in 2017, being an Italian, I was always impressed or had the feeling that Canada was a very green country. And then my surprise when I entered the country and I saw a lot of the waste that we produce here. And so just that was a natural evolution for me to bring my research into something that could help local communities and businesses to actually improve their performances on this standpoint. Italy is known for many things, but actually she scores very high on circular economy metrics because of the frugality of the system that we have there. And I hope to bring in some lessons through my research in this space.
Yeah, Yuri, you raise a really important point, is that sometimes our wealth has actually hindered circularity. And so frugality is forcing a lot of developing nations to be well ahead of where we are in Canada. I would love to learn more about your initiative, Barb. Can you tell us more?
Sure. And, I can't tell you more without sort of painting a picture of the place that we're working. And as I said, Guelph's a mid-sized city, but we're surrounded by the County of Wellington, and we have a really shared, rich and deep agricultural history. We're on the traditional Treaty 3 land, the territory of the Mississaugas and the Creda First Nation. We're also located at the heart of the Toronto to Waterloo Innovation Corridor. So we're a hotbed for technology innovation in multiple sectors: clean tech, green energy, advanced manufacturing. So people here are really passionate farmers, urbanists, environmentalists, social and tech entrepreneurs, and we have a pretty vibrant food community. But despite all of that, in this relatively affluent area, 17% of our households are food insecure, and the cost of healthy food, as we all know when we go to the grocery store, is rising. And it's really just not a local problem. By 2050, the global population is going to grow to 9 billion, putting more pressure on our food systems. But the real paradox at the heart of this is that there is an abundance, but 40% of the food we produce never makes it to the plate. And much of that is wasted. It ends up in landfills, creating greenhouse gas impacts. So the food system, a driver of climate change, and it's also extremely vulnerable to its impacts. And I think, as we all know, through COVID, we experienced some of the dangerous vulnerabilities of the food system and the inequities. So these are really big problems to solve, but they're ones that we decided to tackle here in Guelph, Wellington. And we put an application in and won $10 million from the Federal Smart Cities Challenge. And that gave us an opportunity to really accelerate a lot of the work that was happening here. And our big vision is to create Canada's first circular food economy. We really believe that if you rethink the food system, you can remake the world. So using data and technology and all of the expertise, we're set out on a 4-year journey to reinvent how we produce, distribute, and consume food in a more sustainable and ethical way, and to provide a practical roadmap for others to follow. So essentially, we're creating this rural urban living lab where people can experiment and learn and test. It's a real world test bed for businesses to come here and work with others to develop new circular business models and supply chains. We've even designed a digital passport and guidebook, and we've got a concierge service for businesses to access a range of coordinated services and supports. But because we're super ambitious about system change, not just one-off change, we have 3 connected outcomes. And the first is to create increased access to affordable, nutritious food for all people in our community. Secondly, to create new innovative circular food businesses and collaborations to get us on that path to a regenerative economy. And third, to find ways not just to prevent the waste, but to create new value from what is currently considered waste, so that we start reducing the environmental impact. We have this very complicated and interesting, dispersed and interconnected governance and implementation model. We've contracted with leaders and organizations throughout our community to convene cross-sectoral tables that are hard at work designing and implementing interventions to nudge small changes in each area of the food system, from farm to fork to waste. Our strategy is really what you would call emergent, and our view of system change is that targeted, small, co-created interventions can have a real catalytic impact on large complex systems. So I can't share them all, but just to give you a sense of the kinds of things we're working on here in this project, we're supporting regenerative agriculture, connecting farmers to broadband access and digital tools. We're investing in community-led urban agriculture. We have pay what you can grocery delivery services to address food insecurity, food loss and waste interventions with businesses to divert organics from landfill and improve their bottom line, and a social finance fund and a circular business accelerator program that's going to launch in September. But I just want to zero in on the work that we're doing with Ivey, and that's looking at how we can support circular business models that help find new value from waste flows. So to do this, we've created a resource exchange platform, kind of like a Craigslist, where businesses can post their commercial waste flows that other businesses can use as inputs or to their own processes or to create new products or lines of business. And we've also created a repurpose program that will work in hand with businesses to support them in that process and to create new circular value chains. So that gives you just a sense of our work, but you can certainly read more about it at foodfuture.ca.
Barb, I can't help but take away a few important things. One is that you already had an ecosystem of sorts in place, right? So you had the food manufacturers, the IT, the innovation framework on which you could build. But then the other thing I take away from what you're saying as well is that it requires a whole range of activities. So it wasn't just about food. It's also about money and getting the finance in there. It's about IT and information. So, and then you have to nudge the whole system bit by bit. We'll come back to that. But Jury, I would love to hear about the collaboration that you have with Barb.
So with Barb, it just naturally happened that the curiosity I had in regards to how this complex circular systems develop was actually matching with the needs of their program to really understand the system that is developing in the community. So this is not novel to many probably, but practitioners are very good at acting, as you said, and especially in this case where there is a complex system to coordinate and nudge, it's very difficult to have a sense of how the system look like and how is it developing. And so as a researcher, I come in with analytical skills that can actually help actors like Barb and others to illuminate the system as it develops. So for example, with a group of researchers, I'm mapping waste-to-waste exchanges between businesses. And we have been doing this for some time. And so the map is already quite complicated. There are more than 50, 60 waste exchanges. We can understand the geographical deficiencies of the system so that we can tell Barb and others to target their actions in certain areas. We can understand the functional deficiencies of the system, meaning materials that are not covered by or that are overlooked by the system currently and might still be able to create value. And therefore, we really give the ability to practitioners to see and understand how the system is developing, which is usually very difficult. And I would say from an interventionist standpoint, what Barb said is based on a theory of change. You have a theory of how acting on certain trigger points might generate change. Well, do we know if that theory at the end will work? We can only know that if we do reliable research. So what we do is that we make these hidden assumptions explicit, and we see if actually the system develops as it should, given the assumption and the interventions we've made. There is a great learning possibility there, both in terms of assessing if our assumptions are real, like, is it working as we expected? And if not, what's the outcomes that these actions are generating? And is it still good for the system? So in a nutshell, I'm bringing in analytical skills that can help practitioners to understand the consequences of their action as the plan unfolds.
Listening to Barb, I was overwhelmed by the amount of effort that it takes to do what she's doing. And I can understand that she's just going from the day to day. And I think, Jury, what you bring is this ability to step back and reflect as well, and then analyze the data. But then I also really love what you said about the hidden assumptions, that you can actually challenge some of the things that we take for granted, some of the things that we think we know, but we don't actually know. And then finally, the outcomes. I don't know if it's always easy just to say that there's outcomes when you're in the moment, that Barb is able to then sort of evaluate and reevaluate as she goes on. Barb, did you want to add to that? And I would love to hear, any challenges that you think that there are as well in the collaborations or even in running a circular economy?
Yes. I've been playing with words like mirroring back and reflecting pool. And you're right, as a practitioner, we certainly, when we did this project, started with a theory of change, but we're acting on experience and hunches. And sometimes, we can live in an echo chamber and, we're not, and we have some shared theories of change and some shared hunches that we're acting on. And it's really important to have somebody, from the outside taking a considered approach, a research approach that can help us pause and reflect. And sometimes, you get to an inflection point where you realize, there are projects we've started here that didn't work. We had a e-bike delivery system with a local, restaurant that during the pandemic pivoted to become sort of a fresh food market. And that fell apart. And so we learned that we needed to do something different and we need to go in another direction. And research, particularly in this case, will really help us to pause and reflect and mirror back to us the hunches and the hidden assumptions that we're working on. And so, already based on Yuri's previous research, we had this idea we'd build this platform and maybe a bit of it, if you build it, they'll come. But based on Yuri's research, we realized, no, we're going to have a concerted program of support for businesses, because you can only act at the speed of trust and the speed of knowledge. And so we need a program that can build that kind of support and understand the obstacles and the barriers to what we're trying to achieve. And certainly the research work that Yuri's going to be helping us with will add to that and help us make some course corrections.
Yeah, another point that you just raised as well too, that the research collaboration also helps to amplify the learning so that people can share them worldwide, but certainly within Canada. Yuri, any other comments that you want to make on that, on the challenges or opportunities?
Yeah, so I will start from the opportunity, try to be positive, and then I will move to the challenges. On the opportunities, when I say describe the system and help practitioners to reflect on how it is developing, I think one important feature that research can add is this ability to zoom in and out. We're talking about nested systems here. So it's one thing to have an understanding of the entire circular bioeconomy, but then won't tell you much about the challenges of the individual firm nested within that system. And so what our research really tries to do is to look at three layers or at three levels of analysis: the cognitive complexities that a manager in a circular economy faces, because we come from a linear system, we have that mindset. Switching to a circular mindset is not necessarily easy, and therefore there will be path dependencies that we need to unveil and somehow overcome. So our research can do that, can focus on the firm, can focus on the dyadic connections, and then can focus on the whole, the entire system. So the ability to zoom in and out is a great opportunity for generating new knowledge, but at the same time supporting action. And there comes the challenge as well. Like I understand that we are trying to develop a system and therefore develop a network of businesses that can work together in a circular fashion. But we are a system ourselves. So we are a network of partners that work together. And these partners have different time horizons, they have different languages, they have different expectations, and sometimes different goals. So I think one challenge has been, how do we work together well? How can we trust each other? How can we respect each other? Processes that are sometimes different. And so just to cite psychology of organizing, social psychology of organizing of Carl Wake, we have been coming together not because of, well, somehow for similar goals, but mostly because we share complementary means. And we need to find a way to be able to use well those means. And we are still exploring how to do that well.
And it really reinforces a point that Barb was saying: we can only move as fast as the speed of knowledge and trust. And when you have the complexity of different timeframes and goals, that's really hard to achieve. We have a couple of questions that have sort of been raised by the group. And if we could just move through them relatively quickly. I'd like to end, though, in the next few minutes with pieces of advice that you could give people. So maybe ponder that for a moment. But the question specifically, neither one of you can answer. What kinds of technology are critical to the circular economy?
Do you want me to jump in, Yuri?
I have an answer, but I'll let you lead first.
Okay. The platforms that take processes that people have to do every day and digitize them are really helpful. So our local food security partners bring in food from all different places. And in order to connect that fresh food into the system and into businesses, right now they're using spreadsheets. Like digital platforms make possible the ability to track and report and evaluate. So from our perspective, technology that enables collaboration, that enables tracking, that makes things faster and easier for people that are the doers, have really been helpful in this initiative.
So Barb, is there a specific software or app or something you use?
No, it doesn't, it doesn't matter what the app is. It really, you have to fit the form to function. So in fact, in this project, we didn't start with technology, even though we're a smart city project. We started with the vision, we started bringing people together. And it's really only now that we're having the conversations about the technology that's going to help us deliver some of the programs and services and approaches that we want to do. But it's really technology that supports the ecosystem collaboration. And I think we're going to see that. We're already seeing collaborative and cooperative business models and supply chains. And so I think technology that enables that as well is going to be very important.
What about you, Yuri? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been interviewing more than 100 firms and talking with managers, and I have two main sort of observations to make at this point. One is technology is important, is always important, and specifically I can see technology that help us to manage the massive amount of information that we generate. It can be blockchain, for example. But the ultimate goal of that technology is to allow for intelligently decentralized production and consumption systems. The circular economy is not about one big producer leveraging economies of scale. It's actually many organizations connecting with each other and using each other resources in a synergistic way. So everything that can help us to make that optimization process to guide that balancing act between organizations will help. On the other way, I would say that there is so much we can do with the technology we already have. There are infinite possibilities that we need to become aware of that are given by the operational resources that we have. It's just sometimes mindset, understanding how to use the degrees of freedom that we already have. And instead, we always think we need more degrees of freedom with new technology. That's a false assumption. There is so much more that we can do. And we have written a blog on our website, Circular Economy at Ivey, where we sort of say that if we gain more awareness of our resources and capabilities, we can achieve much more. And we have practical example of organizations that, as they started to look at waste as just one type of material, they really were able to upcycle a quite substantial amount of value without changing their operational processes or introducing new technologies.
That's fantastic. And you're right. We're always looking for the technology to be the solution for the problems, and what we already have much more power than we need. So it's knowing how to use them. The one thing that really I think about a lot, and even in my own work, but circular economy, circularity is almost a regional thing, right? And Barb, your food for food future shows that. But how do we scale this up to something that's a little bit larger in Canada? I think the scaling up becomes really critical. Or will we always just have little, what are they called, cells or nodes that we work in? And you have to answer that within about 30 seconds, Barb.
No way. We absolutely can scale this up. I think we have to have a a focused regional sector-based strategy. So, we're looking at food because that's our history, but another community can look at mining and minerals and so on. And then you connect that to a national strategy across sectors and a national roadmap and national challenges and opportunities. Absolutely, this is scalable. And in fact, we're already in the middle of it, and we just have to push forward.
Fantastic. Yuri, I'm going to ask you a more difficult question, and if you can't answer it, you can always pass it on. But what about the willingness to pay? Do you think consumers are going to pay for circularity? Because ultimately, if we don't get consumers into this mix, it won't happen.
Currently, we like to look for more sustainable products. We don't necessarily, there is evidence that suggests that we don't like to pay more for the sustainable products. And so I think it will be very difficult to stimulate consumption, especially across consumers. Although there are some organizations that have been able to convince their customer base to continue to buy their products. There is this organization in Montreal which produces juices out of surplus waste from retailers, and they really had it difficult at the beginning, because not so much because of price, but because when you produce something out of wasted streams, you don't have nearly the same steady production flow as you were to source what the consumers would like to consume. So essentially, 1 week you might have clementine juices because that's the waste that you got, and another week you can have green juices because that's the waste you got. And so the challenge there was elasticity. The consumer had to be willing to buy what's available that week to make the business model sustainable. And so there are a number of challenges on the consumption, but I think we can get there. There are initiatives in Canada that are led by our somehow partners, HP and others, that focus mostly on plastic, not food in this case, but that are trying to create an ecosystem where the government can buy greener. And if the government buy greeners, that's already 20% of our GDP, actually 13% of our GDP. So I think we can start by stimulating demand by working with government and big corporations. And I'm pretty sure that awareness will then develop also among consumers.
Fantastic, Yuri. I love the example. We have only a minute left. So Barb, pieces of advice, very briefly, if you could just list 2, 3 pieces of advice in moving towards a circular economy.
Sure. Well, you need to connect the local to the global. You have to ground the vision in the local, but people want to know that their actions can have global impacts. You have to hold the vision and keep coming back to it incessantly and draw the line for people from the work they're doing to that vision and create that trust within the ecosystem. And you really can't build a circular economy or a circular culture or a supporting ecosystem without collaboration, and frankly, collaborative business models and supply chains as well. So there's really an important role to play for practitioners as brokers and champions to encourage the type of a system that really is about deep collaboration and change and trust between parties.
Yuri, your pieces of advice for working with managers on the circular economy.
I would say, as a researcher, and I'm learning as I do it, we need to become much clearer in terms of the value that we can bring to practitioners. We're very good at, and we are trained to position ourselves in terms of theoretical contributions. We struggle a lot to make to bridge that to the practical, immediate contribution that can come from the work we do. And so my one piece of suggestion for researcher that wants to engage in the circular economy and more generally working with practitioners is to really think carefully and thoroughly about the value proposition that they bring and being able to articulate that clearly.
Fantastic. I knew that this would be a really great conversation, Barb and Yuri. Thank you so much. And stay tuned, everybody. We'll have not only a recording of this discussion, we'll also produce little clips and documents that you can share that synthesize what we've learned. I want to tell you about just the next podcast, or sorry, live stream, as on June 17th. It's maintaining long-term purpose in a short-term world, and it's at 1 p.m. and involves two academics who've done fantastic work in this space. And then the CEO of Volans, which is a consultancy that's done some really amazing practical work. So stay tuned. Thanks again, Yuri and Barb.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everybody.